Hello there, everybody. Trek Culture's Adam Clery here, and I have just this instant finished watching the very first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, the first animated Star Trek series since Star Trek the Animated Series, and the first brand new televised Trek property since earlier this year. Now, for real, if you'd asked me, Adam, when did Star Trek Picard arrive on television? I would have said, oh God, feels about 15 frickin' years ago to me. But no, that was January 2020. It finished in March 2020, about 2 weeks before all of this started happening. So it is my sad duty to inform each and every one of you that 2020 will never, ever end. It's going to go on for so long, we're going to get 3 brand new Star Trek shows in it. But never mind, like, where this year, and indeed my entire goddamn life, appears to be going. We have a new Star Trek show. It is Star Trek Lower Decks. And just a big spoiler ahead of this video, I really liked it. Now, we'll get into why I liked it, and how I liked it, and when I liked it, and who I liked it, and all of that other stuff. But before we start, just going to say, if you've watched any Ups and Downs episodes on any What Culture channel before, you will know that what we do is we go scene by scene, beat by beat, and examine everything in the episode in the context of either the show itself or the overarching story. But this is the first ever episode of Lower Decks, so we can't do that, because it's all about the context of the show and the context of the episode, but we have no context to the show, and we have no context to the episode, we just have this. So what we're going to be doing instead is taking a big old step back, don't look at my pajamas, and examining the whole thing in terms of its vibe and its feel and its concepts, and seeing if all of that works. In future episodes, we'll be looking at the episode, the little bits here and there, all the details, all the scenes, etc. But not this week. We're just going to examine the whole thing to see if that is good. And, well, it is quite good. So let's get started. My name is Adam Clery, and it gives me great pleasure to say that these are all the ups and downs from this week's episode of Lower Decks. And just really quickly before we start on all of this, and while I wait for all my juicy, delicious CBS checks to allegedly clear, if you're the kind of person who sits and they see something like this and they go, well, there's no way they really liked it, they must be getting paid off by the network, then this is not going to be the video series for you, my friends, because I think I'm going to really, really like this show unless it drastically starts to suck later on. So, instead of winding yourself up and getting annoyed watching stuff like this, just go outside, go dance in a field, be merry, see an old friend, kiss literally anybody. I don't care. But while we're on the subject of all those goddamn bedwetters, if there is a more tedious gripe in the world than Star Trek isn't Star Trek anymore, I am yet to hear it. You see, despite the entire world's television tastes and methods of consumption and viewing habits and everything changing since Enterprise last went off the air, attempts to modernize the franchise and put it more in line with modern television has really upset a lot of adult babies. Now, if that was you, then A, my God, how could you be bothered? But also B, are you happy now? There could not have been a more Star Trek-y set of Star Trek opening shots in the history of Star Trek if they'd had a million goes at doing it. Absolutely everything about those opening moments, from the starbase to the ship zipping around, the planet, the music, the tone, the feel, everything about the first minute or so of this was just... it was Star Trek. It was everything that's allegedly been missing from Star Trek over the last couple of years, all presented front and center. Now again, I'm not the kind of person who gets upset by change because, again, my God, how could you be bothered? But this was also warmly nostalgic and reassuring. I just loved it from the get-go. Up. Now, one thing that's been apparent about Lower Decks from the very get-go was that the whole vibe was going to be, hello, we're big Star Trek nerds, and you're big Star Trek nerds too, so come watch this show we're going to do, because it's going to be full of Star Trek nerdery. Absolutely everything in this episode, from the obvious stuff like the typeface, the very typeface of the opening credits being a nod to The Next Generation, to tiny little blink. How do you blink with your ears? Ear blink and you'll miss it moments, like mentioning Cetacean Ops was designed to get a tiny but powerful geeky pop out of every single person who was watching it. And you are all absolutely welcome, by the way, because nobody on Earth was talking about the fact that starships were supposed to have dolphins and whales on them until we here at Trek Culture did that lovely Secrets of the Ships You Didn't Know series. So, Boom! Influencer. Now I should say, of course, that you're probably sitting there going, tell me about them all, Adam. What if I missed some? I'd really like to hear about all the tiny little nods and winks and Easter eggs and references and stuff like that. I'd love to hear about them all. And rest assured, my dear friend, this might be Trek culture, but it's also what culture, so that is entirely our bag. And I'm sure somebody will be along in due course with an entire video series about all of the little references in it. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know whether they're going to be this handsome or not, but they'll be along shortly. So yes, just all the stuff like that, the little things, the detail and the attention to it, that is getting an up 2. Alright, so the Cerritos. Opinion has been divided on the look of the ship. Some people say it's this wonderful, nostalgic throwback to Starfleet vessels of old, and other people go, that's just a mid-price garden table. Me, personally, I say, why not both? But the thing is, we've spent so much time obsessing about the outside of this ship, we didn't really stop to consider the inside, and that really caught me off guard, because think about it, right? The Next Generation, Voyager and Enterprise all started with the maiden voyages of the Enterprise D, Voyager and the NX-01 respectively. And the first episode of DS9, the inside of the thing looked like the goddamn What Culture storeroom. So we kind of start our journey as the ship or the station is starting its journey too. But the Cerritos didn't feel like that. This isn't its maiden voyage. It feels like it's been lived in. It feels like it's been around the block a couple of times. It feels like the ship and the characters on it are all going to have backstories that are just as interesting as the stories we get in the show. Like, I had the same feeling as Ensign Tandy when we got on there. I was like, wow, look at all this. Give me a tour. I want to know how Rutherford lost half of his face. I want to know how Mariner ended up getting commanded by her own mother. I want to roll up my sleeves and explore every inch of this ship. And I'll be honest, I haven't had that feeling in another show before, so you gotta remember, like, the campy adventures of the original series were so out there and so wild. They not only defined science fiction for decades, but they defined science fiction parody at the same time. Like, Star Trek, whether it was trying to be or not, was a lot of fun. And Discovery and Picard, yes, they had their moments, but by and large, they were pretty serious business all the time. Now, Lower Decks is obviously an animated comedy, so this shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, but being an animated comedy, having such a dramatic tonal shift means that it is going to live and die over whether or not it's actually funny. And I have to tell you, it is not actually funny. It's piss funny. It is hilarious. It got more genuine laughs out of me in 23 minutes than most shows do in an hour. Like, in just this opening episode, we have had every single thing about Starfleet and how it works lampooned to death. We have had a man getting suckled to complete nakedness by a giant milk spider. We've had a zombie outbreak, which was progressively funnier as it went on. We had two people trying to organise a second date in the middle of a firefight. And the bit you forgot, in the middle of it all, we just had a holodeck programme where loads of 250-pound dudes were trying to do reps with their own dick. The only two things you can judge Star Trek Lower Decks on is A, is it Star Trek, and B, is it funny? We've already established it is very Star Trek, but it is also really funny, which I'll tell you what, is a relief, because I thought this would be like, levels of funny, but it's not. It's like, ha-ha, levels of funny, so it gets enough. And you know what, it would have been incredibly easy to spend this entire episode just setting the scene. Like, season premieres are always like, here is the thing. We're not going to do anything with the thing, but here is the thing, and here is the character. They're not going to do anything with the character, but here is the character anyway. And for only 23 minutes, with so much world building to do, they could so easily have done all of that, but they didn't. It was like a Warp 7-ish joyride from start to finish. Second Contact didn't feel like a season premiere. It felt like a series of madcap adventures, with each adventure more madcap than the last, and yet they still managed to get loads of that world building and that character development in there somehow, just very, very subtly. Like from that one scene in the broom cupboard between Mariner and Boimler, Boimier, Baloo, I'm going to get it wrong for the first couple of weeks. Sorry, you learned everything you needed to know about those characters and their dynamic. Loved it. Tendi and Rutherford, yes, they are less developed, but we still got a nice little flavouring of what they're going to be, like purely down to how they respectively handled that outbreak. Like, Tendi was terrified by everything, but was really pumped that she got to literally pump a heart, whereas Rutherford, he was so useful and was more concerned with sorting a problem with a door than getting some crisis tale. Couldn't be me. Even the revelation that Captain Freeman is her mother would have been an entire episode's worth of material for another show, but nope, bloop, drop it in, deal with it later, up. And that's pretty much it. Like, just nothing about this didn't work. Like, yes, when we do other episodes of Ups and Downs, different scenes won't work, so it's not going to be completely positive the whole way through. But looking at the broad premise of everything, it works. The look of it works. The feel of it works. It is very Star Trek. I thought it would fall down for not being funny enough, and it was really funny. So, all ups. But I do have one more point. One thing we kind of knew before we even got into this was if you are a big hardcore Star Trek fan, this is going to feel like it was written especially for you. The references in there from the big to the small are designed to get some kind of very personal pop out of every single fan. Like, you can imagine what we all did here when they mentioned cetacean ops. We went mad. I say we as in the channel, not like me in here on my own for 5 months. Problem is, when you go down that route with a show, you run the risk of it being alienating, it being impenetrable, it being too full of in-jokes and nods and references, so casual fans or people just joining you for the very first time will be like, I don't get it. And Lower Decks has, on the basis of the first episode, this might be a problem later on, but purely on the basis of the first episode, got the balance of this absolutely right, because the characters and the stories are good and entertaining and worth tuning in for in their own right, but they are sprinkled, not saturated, sprinkled with these great references and in-jokes. So it's very enjoyable for the hardcores, but still accessible for people who are new. And the thing that proves this, right, and I think my favourite moment of the entire episode was in that rambling meta dump we got in the closing scene. Like, this is a festival of Star Trek references in the space of about 10 seconds, and Mariner references Kirk, Spock, Sulu, Worf, Troy, Khan, and you're like, yeah, I know all of those. And then she says Gary Mitchell. And Boimler goes, I'll have to look him up, because he's a far more obscure reference. And yes, a lot of people will have seen that episode of the original series. They will get that reference, but most people watching won't, and they took one tiny step to make you not feel like you'd missed something with that. Even he says, I'll have to look that up, because a lot of people will have to look that up. They get it. And do you know what else they're getting for that? Boom. So there you have it, that was the first episode of Lower Decks, and I cannot for the life of me understand how anybody would not have enjoyed the ever-loving out of that. It was great, it was really good, I really liked it. I'm relieved more than anything, because doing a Star Trek animated comedy show where you've got somebody from Rick and Morty involved was a pitfall. It was a pitfall, it could have been very terrible, but it's not. I'm pleased to report that I really liked it. But please let me know what you made of it all. I'd like to hear all opinions, even yours, in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. This has been Ups and Downs for Lower Decks Episode 1, Second Contact. I've been Adam Clery. This has been Trek Culture. We'll all see you soon. Mwah!